We're taking a break, as you will have gathered from our series this morning, because we've got so many things coming up in March. We've got Texans next week, and Drew will be speaking. A week after that, we've got Martin Dunkley here. Martin leads the church at Teesside and is the leader of Taking Ground, part of the network that we're part of. I encourage you to get along to that morning and hear Martin. And then we've got Easter coming up, and so many things coming up. Easter, we've got baptisms, so we've got a good month to look forward to. So we're just taking a little break from the series, and so I wanted to bring this word that was on my heart, really. And I love the fact that this word that I'm bringing comes in the context of all that we've been doing this morning, because it just serves it and fits it so well, as I'm sure you'll see as we go. But it's this whole thing of heroes of the faith. And we've had that word used a few times already in worship and mentioned the word hero. And so just for a short while this morning, I want us to think about this topic. Looking at that chapter that Katie read, somebody like Malcolm Duncan could preach for about 5 years on that one chapter. I've got about 30 minutes, if that. In fact, looking at the clock, a lot less. So it's going to be one little focus that I want to get out of this morning, really, in lots of ways. But heroes of the faith. So here's a question for you to start you off, just to think about. Apart from Jesus, which we'll take as read, who is your Bible hero? If you were to look through all the characters, and there's some amazing names in that list there, who would be your Bible hero? And why? What is it about that person that makes them a hero for you, that makes you think, wow? And for me, as I've gone through life, I could cite different heroes for different times of my life. I think about, as a child, I loved the story of Samuel. Because as a child, as I saw this story that said God would speak to a boy, that inspired me. God, if you can speak to Samuel, you can speak to me. That boy, having been spoken to, could become the prophet who anointed kings. Wow, that inspired me. Who is your hero? I love the story of Esther, who had the courage to take on that word for such a time as this. I've prayed that over so many women over the years who see themselves as insignificant, and yet God sees them as Esther's for such a time as this. Who is your hero and why? Here's another question for you. Who's your historic spiritual hero? And as you look down our recent history, go back as many decades as you like, I know, for some, I talk to some people who are real students of the Bible, and they'll love to get into Spurgeon and all these great theologians and people who just look at Tozer and think, wow. For me, I look at the likes of William Booth, who was such an inspiration to me, again, throughout my life. A man with a heart to see God's people touching those who needed a touch from God, who did an amazing thing. And that work continues, doesn't it? Okay, Salvation Army might not be the force it used to be, But what a legacy that guy has left. Who do you look back and think, if only when I get to the end of my life, I could have had that impact, that legacy? Who feels like a spiritual hero to you now, in this life? Who's been a hero to you in your lifetime, and why? I told some of you before about my elder brother. I'm the youngest of 5, and one of my elder brothers, who's 10 years older than me, was such an inspiration to me in terms of, well, in everything really, but particularly in my spiritual life, as I watched what he did. My dad was ill all my life from being a young boy. I never really saw much of my dad in church, although I knew he had a faith, because he was too ill to go. He was housebound for many years and died when I was in my 20s. But my elder brother, I saw him in church. And as a child, I watched him. And many of you might regret this, some of these things, but he taught me to sing, how to harmonize. It's part of the reason that I find it hard to sing just a melody and I have to sing harmonies. I watched him in the band with his cornet, and guess what instrument I played in the band when I was able to do it? He encouraged me in my piano playing. He got me into the church choir. I watched him. He was the children's work. He worked with children's work in 3 different churches. And I watched what he did. He took me everywhere. When he got his first car, I think his first car, actually, this will be a bit of walk down memory lane for some of you. His first car, I think he got, was a Ford Pop. For those who know what one of those was. But actually, the one that most significantly I remember was probably his second car, and it was an A35 van. Showing my age now, aren't I? And by then, you see, he had a girlfriend, so a girlfriend got the seat that was spare in the A35 van. But I wasn't left out. Everywhere he went, I was in the back of the A35 van with a blanket and a pillow. And I went to everywhere he went, all the kids' works. And when I became a children's worker, everything that I did as a children's worker was what I'd learnt watching my brother. I could go on just with that one character. There have been so many people who have influenced my life. Martin Dunkley, in the more recent years, has shaped me so much and influenced me so much. And you could say, well, it's wrong to idolize people, but actually it's good to honor. Because without some of these people, I would be a different person. So who are your heroes, and why? Is the questions I want to ask you to start off with. Let's go back to the Bible heroes that we just read about. So why were these guys listed like heroes? What was it that got them their names in that list? Maybe it's because they're perfect and never made any mistakes. Well, those of us who were on the Bible Focus on Tuesday night heard reminded again just about David and his many failings. He wasn't perfect, was he? Another one that inspires me simply for the wrong reasons, because I look and think, well, David messed up, so each time I mess up, there's hope for me yet. David made some big mistakes. Well, maybe Abraham. He was pretty good, wasn't he? And yet, when the chips were down, he told lies about what his wife really was. This is my sister. Fear took him into lies. Samson was in that list. Oh, dear me, Samson played with fire at every minute, didn't he? Got himself into so much trouble, and yet he's in that list. So it wasn't that they were perfect. They made mistakes. Thing is, we often write ourselves off because we've made some mistakes. How many times do we make a mistake and then write ourselves off? I'm no good. I get it wrong every time. If I had said that every time I've made mistakes, I wouldn't be here this morning. Here's some scriptures for you. If you are one of those people who constantly beat yourself up because you make mistakes, here's some scriptures for you. Proverbs 24:16 says this: "For the righteous falls 7 times and rises again, but the wicked stumble in times of calamity." It's not about the righteous are perfect. It's the righteous keep getting back up again with God. Micah 7:8 says this: "Rejoice not over me, O my enemy, when I fall. I shall rise, and when I sit in darkness, the Lord will be a light to me." Great verse to quote to the devil when he's getting at you. Don't you rejoice over me because I've fallen, Satan, because I'm going to get back up. And God's going to do great things. God is my light. 2 Corinthians 4:9 says, "Persecuted but not forsaken, struck down but not destroyed." Are you struggling this morning? Do things feel hard? Do you feel as though you're messing up? It's time to get back up again. Time to get on your feet again. Not forsaken, not struck down, not destroyed. God doesn't condemn you. Do not condemn yourself. Now, that doesn't mean to say we make mistakes and we just think, well, that's all right then. Got to be careful what I say here. Because we can go to a certain church and we just think, right, Sunday morning I'll go down and I'll make my confessions. And that's all right again, isn't it? So I'll go out next week and do them all again. Samson was a bit like that. That's not what it's about, is it? That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is, you're going to make mistakes. I'll tell you something. The day that you become perfect, look for heaven. Because you're going to be very close to getting in. We're not going to be perfect while we're on this earth. We're going to make mistakes. But God is a redeemer. So even if you were sat here this morning and think, I've already made some big mistakes now, and I'm in the midst of those big mistakes, God is a redeemer. Get hold of that if you get nothing else this morning. God is a redeemer. Whatever you are beating yourself up about this morning, it's not beyond God's redemption. Thank God for that. Every day I need my Redeemer. So, it wasn't that they were perfect. So what was it then? Maybe it was because they were such people of great courage. What we need in the church is people of great courage, don't we? Reminds me of Follow the Yellow Brick Road. I just need courage. That'll get me through. Well, Gideon was in that list. Where do we find Gideon when we first find him? Hiding away for fear of the enemy. Not a great example of courage. Maybe David then, such a man of battle. fought Goliath. And yet, as a would-be king, he spent so much time running and hiding, didn't he? Hiding from his enemies. Living in fear. Jonah, he's mentioned in there. What do we find him doing? Running away from the call of God. I'm not going to go and do that, God, because you're going to make me look like an idiot. I'm going to tell them that they're going to be condemned, you're going to forgive them, and I'm going to look stupid. Fear of looking daft. It's the one I can struggle with. I'm sure others can. Maybe then Peter, the rock on which the church is built. Surely he was that great man of courage we could look at. And in a few weeks' time, when we're looking at Easter, where will we find him? We'll find him denying he even knows Jesus for fear of, will I get caught up in what I'm seeing? So it wasn't that they were perfect. It wasn't that they had great courage. What was it then? If you look down the chapter that Katie read so well, what do we keep hearing? By faith, Jacob. By faith, this one. By faith, that one. It's about our faith in God, not about our faith in ourselves. It's not about who we are, it's about who he is. See, the thing is, if we make all that we do in the kingdom, if we take all the glory for all the success when things go well, we end up getting all the problems heaped on us when it all goes wrong. Because if it's all about me, when it's good, it's all about me when it goes wrong. If it's all about God, actually whether it goes wrong or whether it goes well, he can sort that out. It's about him, not me. I don't need to be condemned. God, I'm trying to do what you're asking me to do. You do it with me. But if it's all about me, then actually the whole thing is about me. By faith. Don't trust in your own ability. Don't trust in your own righteousness. Trust in his ability. Trust in his righteousness. And he won't let you down. I went all squish for a minute. Won't let you down. They were heroes because of their faith in God and that God helped them overcome the issues that they faced, and that when they were down, when they slipped up, they got back up and got on again with God and saw great things. Let us be those sort of people. But I want to recognize some people this morning that I see as heroes in this church. And I'm well aware we've got visitors, we've got new people, so please forgive me as I do this and you think, right, what a time for me to be sat here. It's not. There are times, and I like to do this on a regular basis because I think it's important, there are times when we need to acknowledge some of what people do, and I want to do that this morning. I want to acknowledge some heroes in the place this morning. So as I mention some areas of the church here, if you're involved in it, I'd like you to stand for me. Okay? I want you, and if you're a visitor or you're new and you think, well, I'm just sat through most of this, just look round and see some heroes of the faith in this part of God's family this morning. Eldership team, trustees, stand as I say you, administrators, finance officers, family group leaders, worship teams, coffee teams, and I know some of you could stand up 3 or 4 times here. Sound and worship teams, welcome, kids church, people who do the offering for us, ministry teams, messy church, Wednesday welcome, my time, Eden, Community Grocery, Alpha, those who help on ad hoc basis, putting chairs out, setting up for events, making cakes, hosting Texans, organising WhatsApp for prayer groups. Do you know what? I'm going to use the get out clause that the writer to the Hebrews says. And I don't have time to go on. If I've not mentioned you, and you think, well, I do this and I do that, I think, to be honest, there are some people sat down who should be stood up, because you're definitely within those things. If I've not mentioned you, I want you to do two things. Forgive me and consider yourself doubly thanked. But let's just acknowledge. Can we just give each other a clap? For me, you are all heroes as you serve the purposes of God here in Hexham, doing all the things that you do. Family group leaders, all these things. We could not do what we do here without what you do. I'm going to finish with this. So, with all that in mind, what then for us? Well, actually, I want to pop into Hebrews 12. Hebrews 12 starts off this way. Therefore, what's the question you ask for when you see a therefore? What's it there for? Therefore, because of what we've just read about all of those things about faith and all those great people, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, who are the witnesses? All of that list. All of that list looking down from heaven saying, well, we know how we did. How are they doing? Let us throw off everything that hinders. Whatever's hindering you this morning, and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. What do we do this morning? We look at that crowd of witnesses. We take heart from them, and we remember that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me if I can get my teeth in. I can do all things through Christ. But remember, it's by faith. Turn to the person next to you and say, it's by faith. It's not about me. So this morning, as we think about people of faith, I honor you as a church. And I really do. I've said this before and I'll say it again because I love the fact that it's true. I sit in meetings sometimes with people and they're talking and they say, in churches, we hear that 20% of the people do 80% of the work. In HCC, that's not true. And you've seen that this morning. We are a church that serves and works for the kingdom. And I honor you as a church for that this morning. You would be listed in that list of great heroes of faith. Keep on doing it. Don't take pride, but take note that that's what you're meant to do. That's what we're called to do. We're doing what you called us to do. And it's great. It's great that you do it. God bless you all.